it before. I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. And I often see synchronicities happen throughout my life that just give me that validation that there is this higher power, there is this divine space that's here and available to help guide us and let us know that we're on the right path, or let us know that we're not alone. I was sharing with some others earlier today that this location happens to be right next to where my mom lived when she lived in Denver briefly. And I felt like it was familiar, the name of the street and all that, and so today I went for a walk and I found it. And it was really interesting. I could feel that energy just walking past. I thought I found it yesterday, and today I went a little bit more exploring, and it's like, wow, that was it. That was it. That's where she lived. And didn't have the best memories of her there, but just very interesting that this location happens to be right there, right? And I shared with Cammie also that at almost the same exact moment when I realized that I found the right place, that I'd been kind of searching for, like knowing she lived in Denver, knowing it was off Colorado, off Monroe, near the Cherry Creek Mall, and I found it, right? This car drove by, license plate had 777s on it, which to me, when I see triple numbers, like that's a sign, So it just was very validating to me, like I'm in the right place. Everything we go through in our life has a purpose, whether we want to accept that or not. The good, the bad, the ugly, the really, really shitty moments, right? There's a purpose in it all. And sometimes when we're in the thick of the pain, of the grief, those times that knock us to our knees, it's really hard to see that. It's really hard to hold on to hope and see that we can rise again. I recently lost my father in 2021. I was 33, and he passed on June 6th, which was 6/6. 33, 6/6. My mom passed when I was 22 on 9/9. Weird, right? Interesting. But I think about that. What are the chances? I'm a numbers person, right? But at the same time, each moment that their time came, right? It was for a reason, and that's part of my story, right? There are these things that have happened in my life, and the thing about my dad's passing, though, that was earth-shattering for me because he was my person, right? He was my number one supporter. We really had this amazing connection that is almost indescribable because he became a quadriplegic when I was 9 months old. And I remember the story of that when he kind of came to in the hospital, that he was just praying, please let me be able to hold my daughter again. And in that, looking back and knowing that, he kept fighting for me. And thank God he did, because I don't know where I would be if he wasn't there to take care of me when my mom went off and did her thing. And they didn't think he was going to live. He was 29 when he got hurt. They didn't think he would live long at all. But he lived to 62. It's pretty powerful. Kind of showed them what's capable. And he taught me how to live life and not get stuck in that victim mode, right? He always had a saying, never give up. That was something that was constantly driven in me. You never give up. And growing up with somebody with a disability like that, you don't really realize how different they are until later when you gain outside perspective. And even recently, I've come to realize oh my gosh, I can't believe he literally every day, cannot dress yourself, cannot feed yourself, and yet he still had a job. Okay, after he got hurt, he went to a handicap program, learned how to do computer programming as somebody in a wheelchair. He had a special mouth stick that he typed with, and he worked in computer programming for 25 years, was able to provide for me and my grandma, like amazing, right? Like there's so many people like when their lives are changed like that, where they just shut down and they can't see that hope. They can't see, I equate hope is to the sun, okay? Because the sun's always shining. No matter if it's rainy, the clouds are covered, it's blizzarding, the sun's still there. It shows up every morning, right? It's still there. That's hope. The hope is still there. Even in the darkest of night, the sun is still there. We just can't see it, right? My dad was that bright sun that just showed me what it means to keep moving and to not be a victim of your circumstance, to not let life be something that happens to you, to be able to rise up and embrace the challenges you're given and to embrace it with humor, like find the humor in it, like laugh it off and keep moving forward and keep pushing. And I think about like my best examples of living life, and I really had my parents to thank for that, and I had two opposite ends, right? Somebody completely confined to a wheelchair who goes off and works and provides and still lives life. And yet you have my mother who couldn't find that hope. And she spiraled and chose drugs and numbing herself, like couldn't deal with those uncomfortable feelings and just kept falling. And I shared this story with somebody else recently, but my mom actually ended up claiming disability. As an addict, she was able to claim disability and get all these benefits because she couldn't work because she had a brain injury, right? Like that was her excuse, she was sick. And it's like, no, she's a fucking drug addict, Like I don't know how she got away, but they get manipulative, whatever. But I got to see somebody who like literally, she died when she was 43 years old. My dad lived to 62 in a wheelchair with a body that can't even cough. Pneumonia is the number one killer of people who are quads because they can't when they cough, they can't really cough stuff up. My dad couldn't sweat. He couldn't be out in the sun too long. He had to use a spray bottle. All these things against him, and yet he was able to keep pushing forward. And so I think about that, like when I think about my own life and all the things that I've done and all the ways that I've kind of been a victim and I've sunk back in that, I have my dad to thank to help keep rising me up. And when he left, times were rough. I didn't know how I was going to recover because I feel alone. And I'm young and I'm alone. I feel alone and I'm not. I have a husband, I have kids, but at the same time, it's like no one loved me like my dad. You know what I mean? Like it just was, he was there. And it was challenging for me to go on. And I was just at the cusp. When he passed, I was just at the cusp of having this big breakthrough, this big moment. I spoke earlier about breaking through this cage. And I was so close. I was standing up. I was learning to speak for myself, standing up for what I need and speaking for what I need and what I want to do instead of always just doing what everybody wants me to do, right? And then he died. And it was just, what do I do now? And it took me a long time to come back up from that. And I think, grief will do that. No one grieves the same. But I was really in this dark space, not even wanting to, I wasn't there. I was going through the motions, but I was not living. I was stuck in that grief. And that was okay, because there's a time to feel things and let yourself sit with things. But the point of the story is I got back up, right? I remembered that my dad had that strength to keep moving. Like I think about if I was 29 and I lost my ability to dress myself, to walk, to be active, right? Like, wow. And so it's like, get the fuck up and let's do life. Like you have so much life to live. You're so young. You have so much left. Like, yes, it's sad and it's okay to miss and remember those memories and cry and have those breakdowns. But you get back up and you know that the sun is still shining, that it's still there, that there is still hope. In your darkest moments, I want you to remember that the sun is still there. It's still shining. And if you can just hold on to that hope, to that belief, to that trust and faith, knowing that the sun is still going to show up and still going to be there, hang on to that to get you until you can pull yourself up. Because we truly are responsible for our own lives, right? We can blame anybody and everything that we want to our circumstances, this person that said this, but we are the ones that have that key to pull ourselves back up, right? We get to choose how we respond. It's on us. We get to decide what brings us joy. We get to decide how we can change things for ourselves. The sun's shining for you every day. I don't want you to forget that.